Huh? But you're the one who bought the house, right? You should be the one to pay the mortgage and the high utility bills for this house.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense for us, who aren't even on the property deed, to be paying.
Why are these people so selfish? I'm completely amazed by their unreasonable behavior. If they're going to act like that, I have my own plans. I'm never going to help them again. I've made a decision. Let them struggle without me. My name is Adriana, and I'm a 34-year-old office worker. I've been married to Kevin for 3 years. We met at a mixer, and I fell for him at first sight. His appearance was the type I really liked, handsome and cool. It seems he was interested in me too. After that, we started meeting alone and our relationship began. We continued dating smoothly, and before we knew it, we were married after a year. His salary isn't particularly high, but he works as a full-time employee, and I thought I could manage. I was just so happy to be able to marry him. At first, we had a happy married life, but one day he said he wanted to live with his mother. I was really surprised by that. We've only been married for a year. But it seems he's been thinking about it for a while because he's worried about his mother, who lives alone.
Please, Adriana. I'm an only child, so I'm the only one who can take care of my mom. I can't relax if anything happens to her.
My husband has repeatedly asked to live together. Being begged like that, if I refuse, I feel like I'm doing something really bad. So I had no choice but to agree to living in New York City. Nice to meet you, Mom. Thank you, Adriana. I'm glad you agreed to live together. My mother-in-law was very grateful and happy to live together. Since she was so happy, I thought it might be okay. I prayed that our life together would go well. And perhaps my prayers were answered because at first, it was really enjoyable. For us, a dual-income household, my mother-in-law took the lead in doing housework. Honestly, coming home to find dinner already prepared was a huge help. My husband wasn't good at cooking, so I often felt overwhelmed being the one to cook all the time. We were smoothly sailing through our cohabitation. But little by little, things started to bother me. It was about my mother-in-law's requests. Adriana, can I talk to you for a moment? What is it? The microwave is a bit old, so I want a new one. With the latest one, the electricity bill will be lower, and it will broaden the range of dishes I can cook. I see. Can we afford it then? Since my mother-in-law was cooking for us, I approached the situation cautiously, filled with gratitude. I didn't have a problem covering everything regarding this. But later on, my mother-in-law started wanting to replace every household appliance with the latest ones, like the vacuum cleaner, washing machine, and refrigerator. However, I felt like some things didn't need to be replaced, so I often refused. Each time, my mother-in-law would consult my husband, and it would become a situation where it's 2 against 1, with my husband saying it's necessary. It became difficult for me to argue back when both of them convinced me. My husband and mother-in-law would say, "We'll contribute too," and take me to buy the appliances, but when it came time to pay, they'd say they didn't have cash on them and ask me to cover it. And even after that, they wouldn't reimburse me for several times. Well, I did use the furniture and appliances too, so I felt it wasn't entirely unfair. However, later on, they started making me buy outrageous things using the same tactic. One day, my husband came home with brochures for houses.
This house is old, and I think it's time to buy a new one.
When my husband said that, my mother-in-law's eyes lit up, and she agreed. What a great idea! They said that and started looking at the brochures with excitement. I thought it was a bold decision to buy a house. But they seemed so happy. And my husband and mother-in-law seemed to find a house they liked, so the 3 of us went to see it. It was a newly built house, but it was very nice, and I also ended up liking it. It was spacious, stylish in design, and had good access to the city. It was also close to supermarkets, post offices, banks, and so on. At first, I wasn't very enthusiastic about buying the house, but I started to want it too. And we actually went through with the purchase, but even then, my husband and mother-in-law made me feel like they were leaving everything up to me. First, they suggested buying it under my name because it would be easier to pass the loan inspection. Then they said they would also contribute later. If I started discussing various matters here, it would take time. But this house is much more expensive than I thought, costing $700,000. What should I do? Should I temporarily take it back? But it would inconvenience the real estate agent who explained everything to me, and if I postponed this discussion about payment methods, someone else might buy the house. We can always change the ownership later, so I thought I'd buy it under my name for now. And with that, we actually bought the house and started living in our new home.
Wow, this is amazing.
It's really comfortable to live here.
My husband and mother-in-law were both very pleased. I also felt comfortable and glad I bought the house. But since buying the house, the attitudes of my husband and mother-in-law became worse. First, my mother-in-law stopped doing any housework.
The house is so comfortable that I just don't feel like doing anything.
Since she wouldn't do any cleaning, laundry, or cooking, I had to do everything. And then my husband also stopped putting any money into the house. We used to put money into each other's accounts every month for living expenses, but he stopped putting any in after we bought our new house, saying he didn't have any cash or that he spent it on entertaining his boss. He comes up with various excuses. And my husband and mother-in-law said they would also bear the expenses when buying this house. My mother-in-law said she would pay the down payment, and my husband said he would pay the loan together. But in reality, I'm the one paying for everything. On top of that, since I'm also paying all the living expenses, I gradually became mentally exhausted. After all, even with my decent salary, paying off the loan for a $700,000 house is quite a burden. I finally reached my limit and decided to talk to my husband and mother-in-law. Could you please contribute to the loan for the house and so on, as you originally promised, Mom, Kevin? Though I felt it was difficult to bring it up when I asked them like that, they gave an unexpected response.
Huh? But you're the one who bought the house. You should be the one to pay the loan and the utility bills for this house.
That's right. It's weird for us who aren't even on the deed of the house to pay.
Why are these people so selfish? I was completely amazed by their unreasonableness. If they're going to be like that, then I have my own thoughts as well. I won't help them anymore. I made a certain decision. If they're so troubled by me leaving, then so be it. Once, I decided that I just needed to act. I started packing my things without saying a word.
Huh? Where are you going? Are you going to buy a new air conditioner? We need it in everyone's room, not just in the living room.
My husband casually saying such things. Does he think I agreed with what he and my mother-in-law said earlier? I really made a mistake marrying such a thoughtless person. I left the house with my belongings and immediately headed to my parents' house. Since I came home so suddenly, my parents were surprised.
What's wrong, dear?
Did something happen? Since I had a gloomy expression, my parents asked with concern. I told my parents everything that had happened. As I spoke, I realized how unreasonable my mother-in-law and husband had been, which made me even more angry. And my parents were also equally indignant.
You don't need to deal with such people. You can stay here as long as you want.
My parents said so and accepted me. For the first time in a while, I ate my mother's cooking and had a relaxed time. And I was able to go to sleep in a relaxed state without being disturbed by anyone. The next morning when I woke up, as expected, there were a lot of missed calls and messages. They were all from my husband and mother-in-law, of course. The content was all about where I was right now, but they weren't really worried about me. To them, I'm just a house manager. So after asking where I was, the messages said to come back home to prepare meals. In short, they only think about themselves. I fully understood this in just one day. That's why I completely gave up on them. I continued to ignore messages and calls from my husband and mother-in-law. After 3 days, there were quite a few missed calls and messages. I decided to take paid leave and went on a getaway spa trip with my parents without going to work. I took Friday and Monday off, so it was a 2-night, 3-day trip with plenty of time. I spent a leisurely time at the inn with my parents. When was the last time I had such a stress-free, peaceful time like this? Even during that time, messages from my husband and mother-in-law came in several times, but I turned off notifications and put the phone on silent mode so I could enjoy my trip without worrying about them. When I checked the messages briefly on the way back, my husband and mother-in-law seemed to have visited my workplace and even my parents' house. But since I wasn't there, they seemed to be genuinely worried. While looking at the messages, I laughed to myself, thinking, serves them right. After finishing the trip, I returned home and spent the entire next day resting. I must have been really mentally exhausted because of my husband and mother-in-law. I was able to recover quite a bit mentally. After my break, I returned to work at the company. As expected, my husband and mother-in-law were waiting for me.
Hey, why haven't you come back yet?
What were you wandering around doing without any housework? You're not off with another man, are ya?
My husband and mother-in-law shouted without any regard for others. I replied, no, I haven't done anything like that. I called security to escort them out. Although my husband and mother-in-law were making a fuss, they didn't dare to cause trouble in front of the strong security guards. Since they were waiting near my workplace, I asked my father to pick me up by car. As I left the office, they tried to approach me, but they stopped midway when they saw my father. Ignoring them, I got into my father's car and went home together. After that, my father picked me up every day, so my husband and mother-in-law didn't dare to approach me recklessly, only sending messages or making phone calls. But after ignoring them for nearly a month, they found themselves in a tight spot. They must have realized it was a serious situation. Suddenly, my husband and mother-in-law came to my parents' house.
What's going on? Can we, talk to Adriana? Isn't it brazen to hurt my daughter so badly?
Oh, with all due respect, we don't even know why she left. And we were shocked to receive an eviction notice. If this continues, we'll lose our home.
Please talk to us.
My husband lowered his head as he said that. My mother-in-law followed suit and lowered her head slightly. I watched them quietly from where I was. My father crossed his arms and glared at them and asked,
Can you promise that you won't get emotional and angry no matter what? Yes, of course. We also want to talk things out.
My husband replied nervously. I had intended to have a conversation, but with my father intervening like this, perhaps my husband and mother-in-law would calm down a bit. Nervously, my husband and mother-in-law entered the house.
Adriana, why haven't you come back home? Because of you, we're... Ahem.
My father purposely cleared his throat. My husband looked startled, then sat in front of me and began to speak quietly.
Anyway, we're in a pretty tough situation. Why do we have to be kicked out of the house?
My husband asked me, looking troubled. My mother-in-law, although shrinking slightly, awaited my response. I told my husband and mother-in-law why I had left. Mom, Kevin, didn't you make me pay for everything? And you promised to pay at first, but in the end I ended up shouldering everything. Furniture, house, trips, living expenses, everything.
Did we?
My mother-in-law tried to play dumb, but I had written everything in my diary. I always wrote things down just in case something happened. Here, on this date, in the notebook, you asked me to pay first, saying you would reimburse me later. This is for the trip, and this is for the TV. Oh, and here's when we bought the bed. As I said this, I flipped through the notebook, and both my mother-in-law and husband turned pale.
You had something like this prepared?
Isn't this going a bit too far?
Why? You haven't paid a single penny, have you? What's wrong with keeping evidence? And the most important thing is the mortgage on the house. At first, we agreed that both my mother and I would pay for it, but I ended up paying for the down payment and the mortgage all by myself in the end. I warned you because this was different from our initial agreement. You made me pay for the mortgage, utility bills, and living expenses, leaving all your income for yourselves from the start, right? You never intended to bear the burden yourselves. You planned to do this from the beginning, didn't you?
That's...
Since the property is under my name, there shouldn't be any problem if I decide to sell it, right?
That's not fair. We're in trouble because our house was sold without our consent.
That's right. What should we do if you don't help us get the house back?
Then first, apologize to me for all the trouble you've caused me until now.
Huh?
You thought I would just do whatever you said because I'm easy to manipulate, didn't you? You've been taking advantage of me for so long that you probably thought it was okay to be selfish towards me.
Well, it's not like that.
If that's the case, would you mind apologizing? When I said that, my husband and mother-in-law apologized in a small voice, saying,
We're sorry.
Well, I thought it would be something like this anyway. They're not the type to apologize sincerely, and I had no intention of forgiving them at all. If you apologize insincerely like that, I can't bring myself to forgive you.
What? We're sincerely apologizing because we feel sorry.
Yes. What's with the sudden accusation?
There's no way Kevin could have been sorry in the first place. Because, are you the one having an affair?
Huh?
My husband's face turned pale all of a sudden. I had actually hired a private investigator to look into my husband's affair, and I had obtained evidence that my husband was having an affair with a junior colleague at his company. When I showed him the photographic evidence, my husband was speechless. It seemed he had convinced himself that I wouldn't find out. So you let me handle the loan payments, and once that was done, you planned to make it all yours and bring your affair partner into the house, right? Judging by your mother's reaction, it seems she knew about the affair too, right? My suspicions seem to be correct. My mother-in-law seemed quite shaken. That's why I'm divorcing you, Kevin. Originally, the house was in my name, so there's no problem with me selling it, and since I'm getting a divorce, you two have become complete strangers. So, please leave the house immediately. Otherwise, you'll be arrested for trespassing. I'm free to call the police immediately.
That's troublesome. Let's calm down and talk.
No, it's impossible, and there's no need to talk anymore.
Do something about it.
Kevin desperately tried to interject, but I had nothing more to say. That's why my father stepped forward, glaring at them, and declared,
That's enough. Get out.
Despite his age, my father, a former police officer, had the demeanor to handle the situation. He could easily overpower my weak husband and, if necessary, call his former colleagues to have them removed. Faced with this, my husband and mother-in-law hurriedly fled the house. Later, I demanded divorce and alimony through a lawyer. Given the undeniable circumstances, my husband complied quietly. My husband didn't contribute any money to the household, so all his income could be used for his affair partner. As a result, there's no extra money besides the alimony to cover their own living expenses. That's why he was quickly abandoned by his affair partner. However, of course, he continues to pay the alimony. He pays it in installments every month, but it seems his life is quite tough, as I often receive emails asking for help or expressing a desire to reconcile. I ignore them all, and if the payments are delayed, I have his salary garnished. I'm back at my parents' house working hard to save money that I couldn't before. Since I don't need to support my husband and mother-in-law, I can save at an incredible pace, and I might even start investing in stocks. I plan to continue saving money while trying out new hobbies. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.